Okay, I guess we'll get started. Thanks you guys for showing up. I wasn't expecting anyone to actually be here last session of Bad Camp.
Close it out.
Yeah,
bring it home.
Yeah, so thanks guys. You're pretty hardcore if you stuck it through this long. So my name is Adam Weingarten. I'm a technical architect over at Acquia, and I'm here to talk about D8 caching. So with Purge, Varnish, and CloudFlare. So what is caching? Like, what is the problem we're really talking about? Your web server is really, really bad. It sucks. It sucks really bad. This is the thing in Drupal that is just a reality. Drupal is slow. And as we have more and more layers of abstraction in Drupal, it's going to get slower. And that's not a bad thing. Like, there's a reason why we're no longer coding in assembly anymore. We now have more expressive power. And as Drupal gets more mature, it's going to get slower. So we need those things. We have lots of requests. Building those pages takes time. So we have caches everywhere. So what are the things we're actually talking about? So it's complicated. It's got layers. It's like onions. So you make a request from your browser. Your browser has cache. It goes through the interwebs. It hits maybe some HTTP caching layer, so something like a Varnish, maybe an Akamai, a CloudFlare, a Fastly, Squid, KeyCDN, all sorts of things. Then it hits Drupal. Drupal internally is going to have a page cache. It has some like internal caches, which then are generally backed by Memcache and APCU. So we've got lots and lots of different pieces that we're talking about. What's a reverse proxy? So a lot of you guys, have probably worked with something like that. So basically, it's just a URL-based cache of HTML blobs. You put a request through, it takes the HTML request, and it just stores it, and then sends it back. So caches those outbound requests, and it follows the HTTP protocol and some cache control headers. Now, what the heck is a CDN? It's a fancy reverse proxy. That's all it is. Generally a CDN also involves a global network of servers. So like an Akamai, a Cloudflare, they have hundreds of thousands of servers spread across the world to distribute load. So users get served from the servers that are closest to them. So if something is cached, then they're going to get it quicker than if they requested it directly from your web server. It can also help protect against DDoS attacks. So if, let's say, you have one web server, it's really, really easy to overwhelm you. Let's say you're behind Akamai and you've got 100,000 servers across the world. That's going to dissipate the waves of a DDoS attack really well. So that's why we use them. How does this actually work? So it's just like before. Browser requests something from the CDN. CDN checks, says, do I have it? If I do, I'm going to send it back to you. If not, I'm going to go back to the web server, see does web server have it, and then it's just going to keep bouncing back up. So what does success look like if we're doing things well? So failure is we have a miss. So over here, CF cache status, miss. So here's an example of Cloudflare. What does success look like? It's hit. Literally one word makes the difference between failure and success when we're talking about caching at a CDN. Everything that we're going to be talking about today has to do with changing that word from miss to hit, and vice versa. That's all we're doing. So it's the most trivial thing, but it has huge implications. So bringing it all together, we want items to be cached in CDN. We want to see those hits. But we also are going to need to be able to remove items from the cache. So keep that in mind. So caching in D7. It has an internal page cache. It's a URL registry. Keeps full HTML copies of the pages. It's really a lifesaver. Like, it can help a lot. In theory. In reality, it doesn't really work. It's a deep, dark secret. Most people actually turn it off because it's so useless. If you're editing just one node, it deletes all the other things in the internal page cache. Most people don't know that. It's not very useful. Now, what if a CDN or something like Varnish would cache and serve Drupal's content? We just need this in settings.php. So we just pump up the max age to a year. External caching caches everything for a year. Problem solved. It's great. We get great performance. Like, you're never going back to origin, you're going to your CDN or Varnish, except when you edit a page. That's when we start to have a problem. And it's been stuck in your cache for a year. Let's say you have a marketing team and they want to get a press release out, and the press release page that lists all of them is showing the same view from like a year ago. They're not going to be very happy. Oh snap. So in D7, there's the Expire module. So it fires off a hook with the list of URLs when content changes. Modules like Varnish or Acquia Purge then are triggered, and they do the invalidations in D7. It tries to detect some basics and connect the dots in D7 to automate this process. So we can only, but this only invalidates what has changed, keeping other things kind of cached endlessly. So you go in, this is what it looks like. It's purging a whole bunch of stuff. Great. So it's guessing, though. It doesn't really know. There's no connections in Drupal 7 between the content and all the places it's used. So if I have a press release and I have a press release listing page, Drupal has no idea how to connect the press release node to a view listing them. You've got, also, if you have a view with 100 pages, everything stays cached. And you've got lots of different modules that don't really integrate well together. They were all developed differently. It's kind of fire and forget also in Drupal 7. So it's going to try to cache, invalidate. It may work, it may not. And if it doesn't work, you don't know, other than the fact that you've got a complaint from an angry person in the press release group. So isn't that insane? Yeah, it's total madness. Like, things in D7 were really, really rough. So caching in D8, everything is different. It's been totally re-architected. We finally have a generic cache API. So we have the same gets and sets, at the core of it, but we have this new concept of tagging. So when we want to invalidate something, we just simply invalidate a tag, and it basically clears like an entire bin or a class of pages. We can listen to these tags and we can do different things, as the tags are added or invalidated. And we now have a standard consistent render API. So it's kind of, in D7 we had entity cache. This is entity cache actually done right. So everything goes through this standardized pipeline. I think this one was put together by Wim Leers, who actually built most of this in core. So as you you build a page, all these things go through this pipeline. They all have tags, and they're described with these tags like node 1, and the tags bubble up. So let's say I have a block and a view that lists a bunch of nodes on a page. What's going to happen in the rendering system is the block is going to have a tag, like block 5271. The view is going to have a whole bunch of tags for like all of the different press releases on the page. So node 5, node 6, node 10. Those then get bubbled up to the page. Page now has the tags of all of those merged together, and vice versa. So as you add more and more elements onto the page, the cache tags on the page get longer and longer and longer, which is awesome. So all of a sudden now, we have something that's connecting the dots between everything that is being done on the page. It's kind of like sorting books by color. And Drupal clears its caches internally by tag. So when I edit the block, any page that uses that block is going to get cleared. When I update a press release, any page that lists that press release will also get cleared. So if you look at what do these tags look like, here's a tag for a page. This is one I pulled from my site. You have a bunch of stuff having to do with like the theme. So we've got stuff with like Bardic. We've got the nodes, some user information. I think I was logged in at the time, which is why you have user 0, 1, I think I was looking at node 1. So like if I change any of these, it's going to invalidate the page. So those are all the connections, and you can see them. Switch to a different theme, you're moving the blocks around, you rename a taxonomy term. Drupal is going to call this cache invalidate tags, and it's going to blow away the cache for all those connected elements. So we're only cleaning the stain, we're not cleaning the entire table, we're not blowing away like everything wholesale, we're just getting what we need. Yeah?
So this works even if you are logged in and even if you are logged in as an admin?
Yeah. Yeah, so what's going to happen is, I mean, typically Drupal isn't going to cache, at least internally, for a logged in user. Typically it will set the headers so that you're not seeing it cached. But what it will certainly do is, you know, when you're logged in and you're editing things, it will trigger the invalidations when you as a content editor start editing things. This just happens out of the box. So this is just, you get this for free as part of Drupal 8. And you don't even need to install anything, it just happens. At least that part. So what's the result? We have a pretty happy Drupal now. So internally, we're able to clear all the caches. We have a really great internal cache. Things are awesome there. So now we're going to talk about how do we interact with external caching. That's not out of the box. So there's been a lot of work by a lot of different people to make this work well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Purge module. So it's leveraging D8. It basically relies on cache tag listener interface to see what has actually changed. So whenever Drupal invalidates a tag, if we're listening to this interface, we'll know in Purge what's changed. So it's not hard to set response headers with tags. You know, we could basically write this whole thing in like less than 100 lines. Like, what's the big deal about Purge? Why do I need all this extra crap? Like, why can't I just write this myself? So like, yeah, it's totally, it seems like this is gonna be overkill. And Purge is like thousands and thousands of lines. Like, it's huge. So the key is that it's easy to cache things. Putting things into cache is really easy. Getting it out is tremendously hard. I think the two hardest problems in software engineering are caching and naming things. So we've got one of the hard ones. Purge does this in a safe and flexible way. So what is it? It's a middleware for all the external cache invalidation. So it lets you connect to external systems and do whatever you need to do to flush them. It uses a plugin-based architecture. So it doesn't really care what your external system is. It doesn't care if you're using Akamai. It doesn't care if you're using CloudFlare, Varnish, whatever the heck you want to do. If there's a plugin for it, it will work with it. It's technology agnostic. So again, it doesn't care. But what it does is it measures and throttles what's going on to make sure you don't get white screens of death. In the earlier days, in like D6, this happened a lot. We got a lot of support calls about white screens of death involving purging. So there's a lot of work that's been done here to prevent that from ever happening. And as for anything, we can work with any systems. So we want to do those 3 systems, no problem. And it also has a queue-based architecture. So things that need to be purged are going to be enqueued, and then they're going to be worked and popped off. So it's full of lots of annoying and pretentious terms. So I'm going to go through a couple of them. So with D7 and Expire, URL was only invalidation type. So invalidation types are the different ways that we can tell our external systems to wipe the cache. So Purge allows support for tags, that's one invalidation type. Another one is URLs. It also allows us to simply like blow away the entire cache for a system. And we can also do some other stuff with like domains and regex. So it's pretty flexible. An invalidation is actually a specific transaction. So I'm sending the CDN a request to purge tag 56. I'm sending Varnish a request to purge /guppies, anything. It's the single atomic request. The purger is the thing that's actually telling the CDN to remove that item. So in the case of the Purge module, it relies on these third-party plugins that other people are going to write. So there are going to be other Drupal modules to do this. And then we have queuers. Those add items and then queue them so that we can purge them. So we can queue by URL, we can queue by tag, we could queue by anything. So if you have some crazy way that you need to get stuff cleared that isn't going to be triggered by those interfaces we talked about, you can totally do it. And then we have processors which eat up the queue and push things through to the queuer. And then finally, we've got some diagnostic checks. One of the big things here is to make sure that are things working the way they should. So we want to look into that, and there's a whole interface and plugin system for diagnostics here. So it's a lot more than 100 lines of code. So to do this right, it's not easy. So what does it look like? So we kind of have a little quick picture of you have your new DA Drupal goes through Purge. Maybe it sends a Purge over to Varnish, clears that, and then afterwards it's going to send a Purge request over to CloudFlare and wipe out the cache there. So that's kind of the flow that we're looking for here. That's what we want. So it makes things happy. So implementations. So we've got Purger HTTP. This is one of those plugins for generic HTTP invalidation. So if you have your own Varnish, Squid, Nginx, cache, you can configure this. It's really flexible. It lets you send any headers, domains, paths, whatever the heck you need. You can configure this to suit your needs or your system. So it's pretty flexible. We have Purge QR URL for non-tag-based purging. There's certain external systems that just don't understand tags yet. We hope they do soon, but sometimes we have to deal with reality. And the reality is not everyone does. For example, Akamai is only supporting path-based purging right now. So sometimes we're going to need to purge by URLs, even though we know that we have this thing called tags. There's a CloudFront purger that was created by Previous Next, CloudFlare, which I helped build. Let's see, we've got Acquia Purge, which was written by Niels van Moork in our support department. Akamai, which was done by Cameron Todd in the UK. Varnish was written by Wonderkraut. And I think there are some more even. So Acquia runs lots and lots of Varnish instances. We're in a big operation to move to Varnish 4. We're expecting to have D8 Purge support really, really soon. We don't currently support cache tag validation, but we do have an alpha program internally. And that should roll out probably in the next quarter or so, we're hoping. But there's a way to kind of hack it and make it all work. If you use the Purge QR URL and this patch, you can actually do all of this today. And I think I'll show that to you later. So I'm going to start to talk about CloudFlare, the module. So this started as an independent project, which was, a couple hundred lines of code to clear CloudFlare. I worked with Niels, who is the maintainer of Purge, and we realized that we could use each other's work. He needed someone who had a plugin, and I didn't want to have to deal with all this extra junk that we just talked about. It's not that we're lazy, it's that we want to be efficient. We could each person could do a better job solving that problem than the other. So CloudFlare, the D8 plugin, it focuses on interacting with CloudFlare, not purging. I don't need to know anything about purging. All I need to do is implement a few interfaces, provide some information, and the Purge module can take care of everything else. So it can do a way better job than me. The basic code to Purge is about 238 lines. There's 400 lines of diagnostics. The idea with the diagnostics is you want to look before you crash and burn. If you look here, you can see it's small. There are all these diagnostics that we've added. We've added one to check for the daily tag rate limit. So CloudFlare has some rate limits. There are overall rate limits at CloudFlare. We test to see if your credentials, your API keys for CloudFlare are correct. If any of these things are being violated, it doesn't make sense to even do a purge. So we're not going to. We're going to throw errors. We're going to let you know. And these things are going to get stuck in a queue. So that way, once we fix whatever's going on, we can reprocess. So plugin, what does it actually look like? So this is Purge, and I'll try to pull it up since this is kind of hard for you guys to see. But basically, you can see here, these are our various plugins, and you would just add them here. And you can drop any ones that you have installed on your system. Down here, we have plugins for queuing. So we have one in this screen that's actually doing core tags. So it's triggering whenever those core tags are invalidated. And we have a couple of processors. So we have a late runtime one, and we have some queue workers. So lots and lots of different pieces here. So CloudFlare in D7 versus D8. We're using plugins in D8, way better. In D7 we were using hooks. Hooks are fire and forget. Something works, maybe. If it doesn't, we have no way to know. We have no way to recover from it either. So it was kind of a crapshoot. It's object-oriented. It actually has test coverage because it's object-oriented. What are some limitations? So right now, CloudFlare only allows you to do 2,000 Purge API requests in every 24-hour period. That's not a lot. We're hoping to work with them soon to raise that limit. They have already raised it once. So we're hoping to get that up. You can only do 30 tags per call, so it is limiting. I would only recommend this for small or medium sites. If you have a fairly large site with lots and lots of content edits every day, it's probably not quite ready yet. So just something to be aware of. And tag-based invalidation currently is only for the enterprise tier, so just remember that. So that was it. I'm going to do a demo after, but let's stop for a second and let's see. Do you guys have questions? Yeah.
So why the 2,000 limit? Is it expensive for them to do invalidation, and that's why they want to limit it?
They're very, very conservative and cautious, and they want to make sure there is a cost in doing it. So they're trying to make sure that these new crazy things don't overheat their system or result in any other problems. So that's really the purpose here, is to just make sure that their infrastructure is reliable and safe. So they're slowly and safely adding this new stuff to it. Yeah, in the back.
Did you talk about how it knows to clear Varnish first and clear CloudFlare second?
That's a good question. I'll show you. Other question? Yeah, Brian.
So I haven't really used cache tags before. I've heard you speak about them before, but the illustration showing how the cache tags are in Drupal core was really helpful. Is my expectation that I'd have the same tags in a Varnish and a CloudFlare, or would there be variation?
Yeah. So what's going to happen is those cache tags are basically emitted along with the HTTP headers.
Okay.
By default, they're not in Drupal. But when you enable these modules, they actually start to emit these cache tag headers. And then, Varnish, once we've updated the VCLs, will read those and start to cache based on those tag headers. CloudFlare already understands it, and we'll parse those. So it's all seamless as part of the HTTP protocol. So that's why we make such a big deal about talking about the HTTP protocol. That's what enables all of this. Yeah.
So if an external service doesn't know how to work with cache,
with
cache tags,
yep.
or you don't have the enterprise level of Cloudflare, which for a certain project, I'm not going to have the enterprise.
Totally.
So then what's the logic for knowing how to invalidate pages? Who's doing the matching to send at least the proper URL to the external
That's a really good
service?
question. So that's going to be the URL queuer plugin. And I'll show you how to do that. Because right now, our Varnish at Acquia does not understand cache tags. It will really soon. So I'm going to show you in a minute how we're going to actually make that work.
Okay, so it's going to happen on the Drupal side, where it's going to know where the cache tags are in the various pages, and then it'll figure out those URLs and then queue them.
Yeah. So basically, the URL queuer, what it does is it's basically like your universal adapter from tags to paths.
Okay.
And what it's going to do is as you make page requests, it's going to store a mapping of the path to the cache tags.
Okay.
And then when Drupal internally does an invalidation on a tag, it's going to go through that lookup table, and it's going to say, oh, I need to invalidate this path. And then I'm going to send a request to purge that path through the Purge module. and it'll get, and whichever plugin has been enabled that supports path-based purging will get that and will then interact with their external systems. Yeah, in the back.
Given that CloudFlare, or that the Purge module does that with CloudFlare anyway, what's the value of CloudFlare having cache tag support for our case in Drupal 8?
Well, so the Purge module doesn't interact with CloudFlare directly.
Okay. No, but I mean, what he just said,
Uh-huh.
what he just asked, what you answered was, this ecosystem of modules that you have has a way of telling Cloudflare, go clear all these pages.
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So given that, what's the value of having Cloudflare supporting cache tags if we can do that anyway?
So the workaround is not as performant.
Okay.
It is not as ideal. A lot of those things really should be happening on the server. In order to do this, we are storing a massive mapping table.
Okay.
It is not ideal, and frankly, I think we're going to be working on doing some refactoring. It is a temporary workaround. It is not the right way or the ideal way to do it. I mean, right now, I was actually auditing the code this weekend. There's some like statements in there which are going to probably generate temp tables, which, I mean, it's only going to happen when content editors do stuff, but it's not ideal. So we probably will do some refactoring, and I'll work with Niels on that. Niels is maintaining that module, so I think we'll be able to get that cleaned up soon. But ideally, we want everyone to natively support cache tags.
Right.
It'll be quicker, easier, more stable. Yeah.
Well, it still might be years until Cloudflare moves tag-based invalidation down into the lower price tiers.
It might be.
We might need that
You might.
module for
Yeah.
more than just temporary.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're trying to do some auditing to make it as performant as possible, and make sure that, you know, it's not going to be, it may not be ideal. I mean, we're software developers, we're engineers. We don't deal with ideal. Sometimes we have to deal with good enough, and I think we'll hopefully be able to get that module to the point where it is good enough for most cases.
And then it might be useful for folks to know that I believe Cloudflare still has a free offering.
We do.
So you can throw Cloudflare on top of your own sites at no charge right now. You don't get as many ways to tweak it. I think you only get 3 rules.
Yeah.
So you're going to bump into something that they'll eventually want you to pay for, but you can actually get Cloudflare for free right now.
Yeah, and the one caveat I'll just warn you guys about, if you do go and try to set Cloudflare up, they don't cache HTML pages by default. They only cache static resources, so if you are going to go set that up, please be sure to, you have to set up a page rule in order to cache HTML that's being sent, so like your normal page requests. Just make sure you do that. So one of those 3 page rules has to be that. Yeah, most people get burned by that the first time they set it up. And they're like, and often people don't even realize it. So when you set it up, just do a curl dash, I remember by curl dash slixget, SLIXGET, gives you all the headers back. And you can look for that Cloudflare hit tag at the bottom, and then you'll know that you actually got it right. In the back, yeah.
What's the major differences between the Purge module and the Acquia Purge module?
That's a good question. So in D7, it was really confusing. You know, one worked with kind of Varnish, the other one didn't. In this case, the Purge module is the middleware, and the Acquia Purge module becomes just a really, really simple plugin. That's all it is. So the Purge module treats Acquia Purge like just another external cache, and you know, it's something else that we have to purge. That's it. Yeah.
As far as, I assume your massive mapping table that you're trying to deal with right now is how you would go about trying to understand the relationship between your cache tags and things related to that to what actually would happen.
Yeah.
How much do you have tools at this point where you can pre-flight just to see, okay, I do this, what is this likely to do? So
what? Yeah, there are a couple ways that you can do that. There are some cache You can update your services.yml file when you're doing development to omit the cache tags as part of the HTTP request, so you can see it then. I forget what the exact key is that you need to drop in there, but you'll be able to find it and add it really easily. Alternatively, if you do enable the URL cure module, just fire up SQL. There's like one table that has it all. I can pull it up in a second and show you. In fact, what the heck, I'll do it now. Let's see. So if I fire up SQL Pro and I go, let's see. So URL purge URL tag cure URL. Here you go. I don't know if I can make this bigger for you to see. Probably not, but what? I can't pinch to zoom, unfortunately. Let me see if I can do that. Let's see, system preferences.
You go to accessibility.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good call. Okay, accessibility.
And then zoom.
Zoom. Okay. And then what?
Just set it to like control that second checkbox there.
Okay.
And then now when you hold down control and scroll up or down, it'll zoom in or out.
Awesome. Thank you. So control. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so here you can see here are like a whole bunch of tags and the corresponding URLs. So it gives you a quick idea. So here,
What are we looking at here?
so what we're looking at is this is that internal table I just mentioned. That URL cure basically starts to build up at where it's mapping various URLs to cache tags, and then it uses that to kind of work around some of the limitations of of various CDNs that don't understand tags. So it can look up and be like, oh, okay, all of these have cache tag 46. I'm going to clear all these corresponding URLs then.
This is something you guys have implemented.
Correct. Yep. And it's going to probably have a lot of refactoring even in the next couple of weeks, I would imagine. So, I mean, these are all under fairly active development. Yeah, in the back.
You said one of them couldn't do all of the tag-based stuff, and so it reverted to URLs.
Uh-huh.
Is there a situation where, like, if you change the home page or something, it purges a whole tree of things when it really doesn't need to? Is there still some level of, like, over-purging that sometimes gets triggered?
It could. It's definitely possible that can happen. So let's say that you have a block that appears on 3/4 of your site, and you go and you edit that block. It's going to purge 3/4 of the site. So
Well, that's correct, but I meant in the situation where you said one of the plugins couldn't speak tags, so therefore it was sort of reverting to a simpler, stupider way of doing it.
No, it's still going to basically use the same logic. So it's just going to, instead of purging instead of sending a purge request with the tag encoded, it's just going to purge a specific URL. It's not going to do like a wildcard on the URL. It's just going to pick a specific one based on things that it knows are in the cache. That's it. Yeah.
Can you distinguish this with the super cache module, which seems to get rid of all the tags? I don't understand why that module exists.
I don't either. I don't know what super cache is doing or super tag. I mean, by default, Drupal does not emit the cache tags. The various plugins here will turn it on and set them to the appropriate headers that the various CDNs will understand. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing. Sorry. Yeah.
So because this suite of modules knows what caches to purge and where they are and tells it to purge, it would then follow that it might even be able to tell it to rewarm those caches after the fact.
Yeah.
Is there any value in doing that?
We definitely could. I mean, you could very, very easily create a new plugin for this that would be like warmer.
Right.
So once you invalidate at the end of everything, you could go to warmer and it would rewarm everything.
Go right back through that list again and say, hey, go and get all these things.
Yeah, you could really easily do that. That's a really cool idea. And since it's a plugin-based architecture, you create that plugin, and boom. So I'm going to pull up what this actually looks like, and we're going to do a purge together right now. It's a demo, so I'm sure something inevitably is going to go wrong, but we'll see. We'll try this together. Okay. Yeah, totally. Whoops. Now let's see. Well, see, this is what goes wrong. Okay.
Just make the font bigger.
Yeah, this I can actually do. Oops. Okay, cool. So here what we have is, this is a Purge module. So I have two plugins that I have enabled here. I've enabled the Acquia Cloud one, and I've enabled the CloudFlare one. Now, in terms of before someone asked about like what's the order, how does it know? Well, here's how it knows. I can assign the order here, and I can move things around. So I can move this up or down and change the order, and I can also add a cooldown in between them if I need to, based on how long I know that my purge will take. So for CloudFlare, it takes about 0.2 seconds for it to process and propagate. So I give it, in that plugin, in the CloudFlare plugin, I've specified that. So it knows that it will not try to purge anything until 0.2 seconds at least after it sent the request. After that, sorry, that's the Acquia Cloud one is 0.2 seconds. After that, it will then send the request over to CloudFlare. If we wanted to add another CDN to the mix, sure, why the heck not? If you wanted to do your cooldown, or sorry, your warmer function, we could add another plugin down here for warmer, and it would fire after CloudFlare has completed. So these are our validations. Down here we have some stuff for queuing. So we have that core tags queuer. So this is our central listener for Drupal's core tag system. We've also added URLs queuer. So this is that kind of universal adapter that we've talked about a lot. And then over here, we can add different processors to process down the queue. The one that I'm going to be using today is cron. So we can basically set this to run on Drupal cron. We can also use drush queuework to invalidate. We could even do it during runtime if we wanted. Don't recommend that. It's great for testing, but you probably want to separate your processing from runtime. So because there's no runtime processing, we're going to have a fun little demo. So here's a page that I have been playing with. So if I go here right now, here's the page. The text here is test 34, test 34. Okay. So this is now it's in the cache. This is the public URL. It's my name, my domain. I am now going to update this to test 35. Test 35. I do not have runtime processing in here, so we should ideally not see any updates here. So I reload this page. Should be stuck on test 34. Nothing has happened because we have not purged anything yet. Now, just to be sure that this should change, I'm going to throw a query string parameter in. This is going to cut through our caching layers, so we're going to see what should we see. So if I do that, so if I throw in like a random number, well, that did not do what I was hoping. This is why you don't do demos. Actually, let's see. Yeah, let us go and see what's going on. So I would have expected this to show, well, oh, there we go. Okay, so it's test 35. It was just the browser caching something. So here we go. So our query buster cut through the cache. We're seeing test 35. But if I go here to test 5, I'm still seeing the wrong thing. It hasn't been purged yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this drush command over here in the background. Normally I probably would have this invoked by potentially cron or have some other runner do it. So I'm going to run this now. This is going to initiate our purge. So what this is going to do, once I run this command, it's going to send a request to purge Varnish first by URL. Then it's going to send a second request to Cloudflare to purge that. So we're going to see it purge, those 2 layers of cache right now. So I just ran it. It processed down a whole bunch of stuff. So now if I reload this, boom, it has now updated. So we've just seen it clear all those various layers of cache together in kind of a nice, harmonious way. So, just to reiterate, over here we have the Acquia Cloud one. Well, first we have inside Drupal. Drupal internally invalidated its cache, which is tag-based. Acquia Cloud doesn't understand it. It only understands URLs, so Acquia Cloud did a URL invalidation. And then Cloudflare understands everything, URLs and tags, and it ended up doing it by tag, because it's going to default to the best thing it can. And then, we had our queuer here, so it queued it by the URL. I queued it by tags, so the things that can purge tags, purged by tag. The things that purge by URL, purged by URL. And then we utilized this drush command to actually do our processing. So getting all of these things to work together is the power of the Purge module. We just took a whole bunch of crazy different systems, put them together, and it actually works.
It's not like that in Drupal 7.
No, it's a whole lot better, and a lot of these things work transparently behind the scenes. So if I were to deploy this to a production site, I probably would just, like I said, write a cron job to run that drush command every minute, and everything would just flow. So your content editors go, they edit stuff, they edit a press release. All of a sudden, the press release listing page purges. Anything else that lists that press release will automatically purge. You wait a minute, everything is done and ready to go. So it's a much, much more elegant, well thought out system than we ever had before. We could never do these things. And not only that, we have all these diagnostics to make sure that it's actually going to work. So I'm checking the rate limits. We're looking at, are my API credentials correct? And every plugin can implement any diagnostics they want. Purge is actually doing calculations for how many things can we validate at once without overloading the web server. It's telling us do we have a processor? Is the page cache enabled? What queuers do we have? It makes sure all these things are actually going to succeed before it does something that it knows will fail. In the back?
When it has a validation problem, where does the notification go?
So it is going to, what's probably, I think what would happen is, and this is a good question, this might be something that we have to refine. Right now it won't actually do a purge, and you would start to get errors in your log.
Some way for our content contributor to see that it did or didn't, or is it just way invisible?
No, I think it is more invisible than it should be. They would be able to go here and they would see the errors, but for a normal content user, they probably wouldn't notice that. Probably what we would need to do is add, a Drupal set message would probably be the right thing if the diagnostics start to fail. And that's a really good feature enhancement that we should add soon. Other questions? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to follow up. So on the super cache, it introduces a new, simpler, sleeker, and faster cache layer that does not support cache tags.
Okay.
And so a typical login and creating 2 articles with the base install is about 2,000 database statements executed. The same thing using super cache is 250. So it's lowering the actual hits on the database.
That's possible. The question is, though, all those different hits are what are making all of the various connections here that allow us to not have to, write rules or add all sorts of logic to connect the dots.
Sure.
So, I don't know about that exact solution, but there's a reason why this is built into core, because it was a problem that everyone had to deal with, and everyone had to write their own logic and a lot of people wrote rules to work around this. The Expire module was written to do this, and no one did it well. And every single project had to struggle with these things. And that's why they put it into core. There are a lot of discussions about performance associated with cache tags, because there's a lot of database reads and writes associated with them. But it's part of the render layer. Ripping that out is pretty dramatic. I wouldn't recommend it. And also, because it's part of core, they're working on optimizing it. There are a lot of really, really brilliant people who are, looking at the database calls. They are, scratching their heads, and they're being, pretty critical. They're kicking it, they're throwing rocks at it, and they're making it better. So, while yes, maybe, there may be some fewer database calls, it's probably not worth it. And also, you have to remember, these database calls are only triggered when you're editing content. They're not triggered for just a normal page view, which is when it would be far riskier. So in terms of, is it really going to harm my site? The answer is probably not. Even for a site that has lots and lots of content editors. Other questions? Anything else? Yeah.
You mentioned that, so when you add like a press release, it knows to purge any pages that press release would exist on. And I'm curious, so I get, like if you're viewing a page that has a view of press releases, it has the cache tags for all the nodes that are being written.
Correct.
How does it know to purge a page that has a view that would display this node when you create the node?
How would it know to purge it if it didn't display that node?
So like you create a new press release.
Yep.
How does it know to purge the press release page before that page has been loaded?
Well, at that point, it doesn't matter because it's not in cache.
But the press release page is in cache?
Okay, so if the press release page is in cache, and there's a, what it would do is, I believe, I need to double check, but I think it has the content type on the view, so it would be able to make that linkage between it, even though it didn't exist yet. So it would say, oh, this is a view that does press releases, so you just did something with press releases, so I'm going to purge it.
So it's like a more generic check?
Yes. Yeah. So and you can control a lot of these behaviors by merging in different things into those cache tags. That's a whole other topic, like the intricacies of cache tags. It's something that you do need to be aware of, though, as you're developing in Drupal 8 to make sure that you respect it and that you bubble it up properly. Out of the box, the cache tags bubble up great, but let's say that you have a block, and all of a sudden you decide to go and kind of render some other node in there, and you don't respect the render pipeline, or you do something a little crazy, it may not know that connection. So those tags won't bubble up properly. So something to watch out for. So the way that would manifest is you would edit something, and the corresponding page wouldn't clear as you expect. So sometimes it happens when you start to mess around with the preprocessor. I've seen some front-end folks get a little bit burned, but just if you start to see that, just watch out for it, know what it is. You're probably just not bubbling your cache tags. Yeah?
What's the best introduction we can find right now to how not to do stupid stuff in your modules? To make sure that modules that create content do the correct thing so that you get the bubbling up.
That's a really good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I can look for that and add it to the slides. I don't know. I think a lot of.
I'd like to be not stupid. I'm just not sure.
I mean, this is new to all of us. We all are going to have scars. The key is just to at least we can talk about some of the scars that we've had and share them with others. I'm sure there are various things out there, but we'll all have to deal with them one way or another.
So cache tags are awesome,
Okay.
and they work really well in Drupal 8. Kind of the other end of this is like the cache lifetime, and being able to bubble up a cache lifetime to the page context. And so currently that doesn't work at all, just the page context as the site cache lifetime.
Right.
Just wondering if you have any idea of is that a target for Drupal 8?
I think they've talked about having a little more control over those things, but it just didn't make it into the initial versions of Drupal 8. It may be something that they add later on. If you look at the issue queue, you'll probably be able to find more information on the topic. I know there were a lot of things that WIM leaders wanted to get into 8, and they didn't get to all of them. Yeah, in the back.
Is there anything particularly interesting or any interesting use cases around either multilingual or, hey, I only want the CDN to clear in one region?
Yes. So this is a much larger conversation, but I'll point you in the right direction. Drupal 8 has a concept of cache context, which effectively is like a vary by header. So what you can do is you can vary your cache tags by those contexts and kind of detect them and purge them in different ways, and you can write your own custom context plugins to handle situations like that. Or let's say I have some sort of arbitrary site mode that I'm using for my site. So I could put my site into, I don't know, alpha mode or beta mode. And depending on that, I want to change my invalidation strategy. I can create a plugin that creates that alpha or beta site context or site mode context and use that to vary the cache tags. And then that way I purge the right things. So if you look into cache context and cache context plugins, you'll be able to get those done. There are a bunch that are built into core. I think language is one of them. I don't remember what the rest are off the top of my head though. And
So what's the practical implication of what you were pointing out?
So let's say you have something like Twitter feed on your homepage, and that Twitter feed should stay good for 15 minutes, and your page cache is set to an hour for the site. So your block has no way of telling the render system or the page cache really just ignores the fact that that block wants only 15 minutes of cache.
It's trapped inside of 1 hour.
largely it doesn't matter though is the answer, because let's say that you do something that invalidates that block. If you bubbled your tags up, the homepage is going to be invalidated and you'll get the data. So who cares? What does it matter? You've achieved the desired effect then. The TTLs really matter a whole lot less in this system now, because if we actually are doing a good job at purging, which we couldn't do in D7, set the TTLs up to like 24 hours, set them up to a week, who cares? As long as if we're actually purging things the way that we think we are, which in Drupal 8 we are, your TTLs matter a whole lot less than they used to.
Are you saying in that case the TTL of the block would bubble up to the page?
No, that's what we're saying doesn't happen, precise. That doesn't, but what does happen is the cache tags bubble up, and when you edit, let's say the Twitter feed, or the Twitter feed is updated, those cache tag invalidations will bubble and result in the homepage being updated. So it doesn't matter anymore.
So that works well if you have like a cron system updating your Twitter feed, but it doesn't work well if you depend on grabbing that Twitter data as exactly.
Well, it doesn't matter, because let's say that the Twitter data, if you're grabbing that as like an AJAX request from your homepage or something, as any time that whatever system is proxying that Twitter data, as long as it knows how to invalidate that Twitter data, you're fine.
But I guess what I'm saying is if that Twitter data is cached into the homepage and fetching that data is done by the request to the homepage, it's never going to hit that code where it goes out to fetch more.